The Galactic War and the Human Bride. The galaxy was in turmoil. The ancient Galactic Empire had always thrived on conquest, its borders expanding relentlessly at the expense of smaller, weaker factions. Planets had fallen, their people enslaved or destroyed, their resources claimed by the ever-hungry Imperial war machine. For centuries, the Empire had ruled with an iron fist, spreading across star systems like a relentless plague, leaving little behind but wreckage and despair. Yet, despite its dominance, the Empire had met its match in the human race. The humans, though technologically inferior, had proven resilient and cunning. Their unity in the face of adversity had earned them the grudging respect of many, even the most ruthless of rulers. And at the heart of this human resistance stood Lord Kale Knightwood, a diplomat, a tactician, and above all, a man who could negotiate his way out of almost any situation. Lord Kale had come from humble beginnings, born on a small, war-torn human colony. But his mind, sharp and calculating, had propelled him to the top ranks of the United Earth Federation's diplomatic corps. He was known for his incredible ability to broker peace, to outwit enemies with his silver tongue, and to manipulate situations with a gentle touch. But few knew of his true nature. Beneath the facade of a peacemaker lay a man who had once orchestrated the downfall of an entire planetary system through nothing more than whispered words and well-placed lies. He was a master of strategy, and while he might prefer diplomacy, he was willing to burn the galaxy down if necessary. And it was Kale's wedding day that would set the stage for the greatest conflict the galaxy had seen in centuries. Emily Winters, a bright young woman from a peaceful farming colony on the outer rim of human space, had no idea that her life was about to change forever. She had always dreamt of a simple life, a life of family, laughter, and a quiet existence among the stars. But when she met Kale at a diplomatic event, her world turned upside down. Kale, with his piercing blue eyes and enigmatic charm, swept her off her feet. He was different from the other men she had known, calm, collected, and yet full of mystery. She soon discovered that he was not just any diplomat, but a man whose actions had shaped the fate of countless star systems. Their love was swift but deep, and in the course of a few months, Emily found herself standing in a grand hall, preparing for her wedding to a man who was both revered and feared across the galaxy. Her wedding was to be a celebration, a peaceful moment in a galaxy filled with war and bloodshed. She was to marry the man who had brokered peace treaties with hostile alien species and secured the fragile alliances that had kept humanity from falling to the Empire. Unbeknownst to Emily, however, there were forces watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. The Galactic King, a ruler whose empire stretched across the stars like a dark shadow, had been keeping a close eye on Kale. The king was known for his brutal campaigns, his merciless expansion, and his relentless thirst for power. He had conquered countless worlds, crushed rebellions with an iron fist, and cared for little except for his own rule. Kale had been a thorn in the king's side for years. His diplomatic success in uniting various human colonies had been an affront to the Empire's authoritarian rule. The king saw this wedding as an opportunity, a chance to break the spirit of the humans once and for all. If Kale could be humiliated, if the wedding could be disrupted, the humans would lose their confidence, their morale shattered. It would be a victory for the Galactic Empire, a step towards unifying the galaxy under the king's rule. On the eve of the wedding, as Emily prepared to step into her new life with Kale, the Galactic King issued a decree. His elite forces, the feared Zothar Legion, were dispatched to destroy the wedding and capture Kale. But the king had made one critical mistake. He underestimated the power of the woman who was about to marry the most ruthless diplomat in the galaxy. Emily Winters, a seemingly ordinary woman, was not what she appeared to be. She had grown up in a peaceful colony, yes, but she was no stranger to the politics of the galaxy. Her father, a former military strategist, had taught her much about the complex web of alliances, betrayals, and power struggles that define the universe. She had learned that in a world governed by war and diplomacy, there were no simple lives. As the wedding ceremony commenced in the Grand Hall, filled with noble guests, diplomats, and soldiers from various factions, the Zothar Legion made their move. Without warning, the massive doors of the hall crashed open, and armed soldiers poured in. Blaster fire rang through the air, and screams filled the once serene space. The guests, unprepared for such an attack, scrambled in panic. Emily stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest, before her instincts took over. Her mind raced not with fear, but with resolve. She knew that the moment had come. Cale had not just married her for love, but because he trusted her to be a part of something far greater than herself. Cale, standing beside her, turned his head sharply, his cold, calculating eyes scanning the chaos around him. In an instant, he was no longer the calm diplomat, but the ruthless strategist he had been trained to be. He had seen the signs of an impending attack long before the doors had burst open, and now it was time to act. With a single glance, Cale signaled to his personal guards, hidden among the guests, who quickly sprang into action. The battle began in earnest, but this was no ordinary skirmish. It was a war, a brutal confrontation, and it was all happening at Emily's wedding. As the Zothar Legion advanced, the tension in the room escalated. Emily knew the fate of the galaxy was at stake, but she also knew that her husband, her true ruthless husband, was ready to turn the tide. The kidnapping and the revelation of Galactic Council's true intentions. Lorian sat in the stark, sterile room, his hands bound to the cold metal chair. The walls hummed with the lower machinery, and outside the small viewport, the stars of the rim sector passed by in the cold void of space. The facility, a classified research station on the fringes of the galaxy, was far from the peaceful diplomatic hub he had imagined. There were no signs of activity typical of a high-security meeting place for ambassadors. Instead, the place felt like a prison designed for something or someone else. He had tried to escape once, but the doors were locked tighter than the promises they had made him. The officers who had greeted him now avoided his gaze, and their smiles were far too rehearsed. The warm words had turned cold quickly. It was clear now that the council had other plans for him. As the hours stretched into a heavy, suffocating silence, Lorian's mind raced. Why had his mother, Elysia Valtor, not come for him? Surely, she would have seen through the deception. He tried to remind himself that she had important matters to attend to, that her role as a diplomat was more crucial than his safety. But the gnawing doubt refused to let go. He thought of his mother's calm demeanor, her eloquence in political debates, her sharp intelligence. He had always believed she was untouchable, an emblem of grace and strength. Now, he began to wonder how much of her was truly as he had imagined. What secrets lay hidden beneath the pristine surface of her diplomatic career? Just then, the door to his cell opened, and a tall officer stepped in. His uniform was stark, black with silver insignia, and his eyes cold, betraying no emotion. He carried a datapad, which he placed on the table in front of Lorian. Asterisk, asterisk, you have a choice to make, Mr. Valtor. Asterisk, asterisk, the officer said, his voice devoid of warmth. Asterisk, asterisk, you will comply with the council's request, or you will become a liability to them. Asterisk, asterisk. Lorian's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Asterisk, asterisk, your mother is a high-ranking member of the Galactic Council. She has served them well. But you, asterisk, asterisk, the officer paused, scanning Lorian's face for any sign of recognition. Asterisk, asterisk, you are not like her. Asterisk, asterisk. A sense of dread washed over Lorian. He could feel the weight of his mother's name pressing down on him. Alicia's transformation. Meanwhile, back on Asteria Prime, Elysia was unraveling. The carefully constructed life she had built over the years, a life of diplomacy, of peace, of protecting her son, was slipping away. The very institution she had served for decades had torn that life to shreds, stealing away the one thing she held dear. Lorian. The betrayal hit her hard, but it wasn't the first time she had been betrayed. As she paced through her personal quarters, her mind flashed back to the early days of her training, to the brutal conditioning that had shaped her into the weapon she had once been. Years ago, Elysia had been a different person, a ghost in the galaxy, operating on the fringes, carrying out covert missions with ruthless efficiency. She had made a name for herself as Death in a Suit, an assassin without equal, feared by political leaders and warlords alike. Her kills were precise, methodical, each one a calculated execution, no matter the target. But all that had changed when she met Jared, a fellow diplomat, and Lorian was born. It was her son's smile, his innocence, that had pulled her from the darkness and made her believe that there could be a life beyond the killing. She had walked away from that life, hoping to build a future for him where he would never have to know what his mother truly was. Now, with Lorian gone, she knew she had no choice. The diplomat was dead. In her place stood a mother whose only goal was to get her son back by any means necessary. The old instincts kicked in. The revelation. Elysia began her mission to retrieve Lorian from the moment she discovered his abduction. But she also knew that her past could no longer remain hidden. She needed information, and the best way to get it was to return to the sources that had once served her. Old allies in the underworld, mercenary groups, and rogue agents who owed her favors. The very people who once feared her now stood as potential assets in her hunt. The first piece of information came from Varen, a smuggler and former contact of hers, who had once provided her with weapons and intel. Elysia found him at a seedy cantina on the outer rim of the galaxy, a place where the unspoken laws of the Council held no sway. Varen's face went pale when he saw her. Asterisk, you come back, Elysia? Asterisk, he whispered, his voice filled with awe. Asterisk, I thought you were done with that life. Asterisk, I was... Asterisk, she replied, her tone flat. Asterisk, until they took my son. Asterisk. Varen swallowed, glancing over his shoulder. He led her to a secluded booth, where he handed her a data chip. Asterisk, I don't know what you're planning, but the Council is not what it seems. Asterisk. The chip contained startling information. Lorian's abduction wasn't a simple matter of political maneuvering. It was part of a much larger scheme, one in which Lorian was being groomed for something far darker than diplomacy. The Council's been building an army of children. Asterisk, Varen explained, lowering his voice. Asterisk, they've been experimenting with ways to mold the next generation of diplomats into weapons. Lorian's the next piece in their puzzle. Asterisk. Alicia's heart clenched. The Council wasn't just manipulating her son. They had been planning this for years. They wanted Lorian not as a diplomat, but as a puppet, a pawn in a galactic power struggle. Lorian's struggle. Back in the research facility, Lorian was beginning to understand the scope of his predicament. As the officers had promised, he was subjected to intense psychological manipulation. They isolated him from the outside world, feeding him false information about his mother's past, painting her as a ruthless killer who had no place in the galaxy's peaceful future. They told him that Elysia was a weapon, a mercenary who had once executed leaders in cold blood, and that his mother's ambitions for him were part of her plan to use him as another tool in her secretive, violent life. Each day, they brought him new witnesses who had worked with her in the past, diplomats, former soldiers, mercenaries, who confirmed the stories of her bloody legacy. The Council fed these tales to him until doubt started creeping into his mind. Could his mother, the woman he had idolized, really be the monster they described? But the truth was not so simple. As Lorian began piecing together the fragments of his mother's life, he uncovered a deeper conspiracy, one that involved the Galactic Council manipulating not only him but countless others. He realized that his role in their plan was not to continue his mother's legacy, but to become the Council's puppet, a tool of control for their future power. With every piece of new information, Lorian's world unraveled further. He had to decide. Could he forgive the mother he had known? And could he even trust her to save him from the monstrous machine of the Council? Shadows of the children. The galaxy was vast, but the lives of Eric, Celine, and Kale Jr. would forever be intertwined by their mother's death, a tragedy that had shaped them into warriors, strategists, and rebels. Though separated by distance, their shared grief and desire for revenge bound them together in ways that nothing else could. But before they could face the Empire, each child would need to walk a different path, and the choices they made in their exile would shape the future of the galaxy. The Mercenary King. The outer rim of the galaxy was a lawless place, filled with bounty hunters, mercenaries, and traitors who lived by their own rules. After escaping the reach of the Empire, Eric had made his home in this desolate wilderness. The pain of his mother's death was still raw, but was tempered by a burning desire for vengeance. His first step toward that goal was to make a name for himself in the mercenary world, a world that valued strength above all else. He joined a notorious mercenary band known as the Iron Claws, a group of hardened warriors who sold their services to the highest bidder. At first, Eric was nothing more than a newcomer, just another fighter in a sea of soldiers. But his skills in combat were unparalleled. He was a born leader, and his natural charisma and tactical mind quickly earned him the respect of his peers. It wasn't long before he rose through the ranks, becoming the leader of the Iron Claws at the age of 23. Under his command, the band became more than just mercenaries. They became a force of nature, feared across the galaxy for their brutal efficiency and unrelenting tactics. They took on missions for warlords, rebel factions, and even the Empire itself. Eric didn't care who paid him. His loyalty was to the cause of revenge, and every contract was a step toward the ultimate goal, the destruction of the Empire. But despite his growing power, Eric remained haunted by the memory of his mother. He could no longer simply fight for money. His battles had become personal. Every victory, every conquered world, was a small piece of the puzzle that would lead him back to the Emperor's throne. The galaxy, he realized, would never be the same after his reckoning with the Empire. Selene, the mystic, while Eric carved his name in the blood-stained history of mercenaries, Selene sought a different path. She had always been more thoughtful of the three siblings, the one who asked questions and sought deeper understanding. Her training with the ancient monks of Zareth, a secluded order of mystics, had transformed her. The monks had taught her to tap into the very energy of the universe, a hidden force that flowed through all living things. At the age of 16, Selene had traveled to Zareth, an ancient world hidden from the eyes of the Empire, where the monks had secluded themselves for millennia. There, she had learned to harness the mystical powers that ran through her veins. She was able to control the elements, summon visions, and manipulate the forces of the natural world. Her abilities were both feared and revered, and it was said that she could summon storms with nothing but her will. But her true power lay in the mystical knowledge she had gained. The monks had taught her the forgotten histories of the galaxy, including ancient prophecies that foretold the fall of empires and the rise of new powers. Selene learned that her mother's death was part of a much larger cosmic struggle, one that had been unfolding for centuries. The Empire's reign was not simply the result of the Emperor's ambition, but the result of forces that had long been set into motion by ancient powers beyond the Empire's comprehension. Selene knew that the path of vengeance was not the only path before her. She had the power to shape the future of the galaxy, to guide it into a new age of peace and balance. But that peace could only come after the fall of the Empire. She swore to herself that her powers would be used to defeat the Emperor, no matter the cost. The hacker and strategist. While Eric and Selene were honing their physical and mystical skills, the youngest sibling, Cale Jr., was shaping a different kind of weapon. Though only 12 years old when his mother was executed, Cale had been the most driven by anger. His mother's death had burned a hole in his heart, but he had channeled that anger into something far more dangerous: cyber warfare. Cale had always been a brilliant strategist, even at a young age. He had spent hours poring over the Empire's data networks, learning the secrets of their most guarded systems. It wasn't long before he became one of the galaxy's most skilled hackers. By the time he reached his late teens, Cale Jr. had infiltrated the Imperial mainframe, gathering intelligence on their operations, their weaknesses, and their plans. He was a ghost in the machine, unseen and undetected. But Cale's skills went far beyond just hacking. He had learned how to control entire fleets of starships with nothing more than his fingers on a keyboard. With access to the Empire's vast communication networks, he could manipulate entire fleets, turning their weapons against them. He became a digital ghost, erasing his presence from the Empire's systems as he sabotaged their military assets. Cale was determined to bring the Empire down from within. He knew that the Emperor's empire was fragile, held together by fear and bureaucracy. If he could disrupt their communications, if he could destroy their infrastructure, then the Empire would crumble from within. His vengeance would not be through weapons or armies. It would be through the power of information. The reunion, a call to arms. Years passed, and the siblings' paths began to converge once more. The galaxy had been waiting for a change, for someone to rise up against the Empire's crushing rule. And as the whispers of rebellion spread, so did the news of the children of Lyra Cale. The three siblings, scattered across the stars, had become legends in their own right. Eric was known as the Mercenary King, a ruthless leader of the Iron Claws. Selene was whispered about as the Stormbringer, a powerful mystic with the ability to control the elements. And Kale Jr. had become a ghost, a hacker who could bring down the Empire with a single keystroke. But it was only when a call for rebellion grew louder that they finally reunited. They met on a remote planet, far from the reach of the Empire, in secret. Their paths had brought them back together, and now, with their combined strength, they would strike at the heart of the Empire. They shared their stories, their struggles, their plans. Eric spoke of his mercenary battles, Selene of the ancient powers she had uncovered, and Kale the secrets he had learned through the Empire's networks. Together, they forged a new alliance, a powerful force of vengeance, armed with the strength of their mother's legacy and their own unique talents. The siblings knew that their war was far from over, but the first steps had been taken. The Empire was wounded, and its leaders were growing desperate. But the children of Lyra Kale were united, stronger than ever. Their revenge was now more than just a personal mission. It was a galactic cause, a fight for the freedom of countless worlds and for the legacy of their mother. Fall of the Empire and legacy. The Empire, once an unstoppable force of tyranny, was now crumbling. The whispers of rebellion had turned into a roar, and the Galactic Empire found itself surrounded by enemies on all fronts. The children of Lyra Kale had launched their campaign with precision, and the galaxy was feeling the tremors of the coming storm. But the final act was yet to come. The Empire's most powerful defenses had not yet been breached, and the Emperor himself had yet to face the wrath of the bloodline that he had betrayed. The final battle, march on the Imperial capital. For years, the siblings had operated in the shadows, picking off Imperial strongholds one by one. They had broken supply lines, sabotaged military operations, and turned entire sectors of the galaxy against the Emperor. But now, it was time for their greatest challenge. It was time to face the heart of the Empire, the Imperial capital, the seat of power where Emperor Vurek resided. The capital was heavily fortified, its defenses seemingly impenetrable. It was a city of steel and stone, surrounded by the most advanced military installations in the galaxy. Eric, Selene, and Kale Jr. knew that they could not win by force alone. The Empire had too many resources, too many soldiers, and too much technology. They needed to strike at the very core of the Empire, where its leadership and symbol of power resided. Their plan was simple, yet deadly. While Eric led a ground assault, Selene would use her mystical powers to disrupt the city's defenses, and Kale would hijack the Empire's systems to break their security measures. It was a coordinated attack, one that would strike fear into the heart of the Emperor and his followers. The rebellion's forces, bolstered by Eric's mercenaries and Selene's mystical army, gathered outside the Imperial capital. The city trembled as they prepared for the final assault. The people, who had once cowered under the Empire's rule, now looked on with hope. The children of Lyra Kale had come to free them. As the attack began, the Empire fought back with everything it had. Imperial ships swooped down from above, while ground forces launched counterattacks against the rebels. But the children were prepared. Eric led his forces with the same precision he'd used in all his campaigns, striking at key locations and wreaking havoc on the Empire's lines. His mercenaries fought with fury that only years of training and vengeance could fuel. Meanwhile, Selene stood on the outskirts of the battle, her hands raised to the sky. She whispered words from ancient texts, calling upon the storm spirits that had served her for years. Lightning crackled through the sky, and a fierce thunderstorm descended on the Imperial forces, causing chaos and confusion. Her magic tore through the city's defense shields, opening the gates for the rebels to march in. And Kale Jr., from his hidden position deep within the Empire's network, launched his most daring attack. He hacked into the Imperial mainframe, causing the Empire's most advanced security systems to collapse. The capital's defense grid malfunctioned, and the Emperor's elite guards were left vulnerable. He erased all communication channels, turning the Empire's military into a disorganized mess. The final confrontation, face-to-face with the Emperor. After hours of fierce combat, the Imperial capital fell into chaos. The streets were littered with the wreckage of warships, and the cries of battle echoed through the city. The Empire's final line of defense had been breached, and the path to the Emperor's palace lay open. Eric, Selene, and Kale Jr. led their forces to the heart of the capital, where the Emperor awaited them, ready to make his final stand. Inside the grand throne room, Emperor Vurek sat atop his magnificent throne, his expression one of defiance and rage. The room was adorned with gold and jewels, symbols of the Empire's unshakable power. But it was all facade, a crumbling mask, and beneath it lay fear. The moment the siblings stepped into the throne room, the Emperor's eyes locked onto them, his expression twisted with anger and disbelief. "You think you can bring down the Empire, children?" he spat. "You are nothing but shadows of your mother. She was weak, and so are you." Eric stepped forward, his fists clenched in anger. "You killed her. You took everything from us. And now it's your turn to fall." The Emperor rose from his throne, his eyes filled with contempt. "You are nothing. A mercenary, a witch, a hacker. You think you can defeat me? I am the Emperor. I built this empire. I control everything." For a brief moment, the room fell silent. The siblings exchanged a look, one that conveyed the pain, the years of suffering, and the righteous fury they felt. Then, in unison, they advanced. Eric engaged the Emperor's elite guards with ferocity, cutting through them with ease. His years of training and battlefield experience were brought to bear as he cleaved through their ranks. Meanwhile, Kale Jr. launched a digital assault, overriding the palace's security systems, disabling more of the Emperor's guards and cutting off his escape routes. And Selene, the mystical force, summoned all of her power with a flick of her hand. She called upon the storm, lightning striking the throne room as the winds howled. The walls trembled, and the very air itself seemed to crackle with energy. She wasn't just fighting for revenge. She was fighting for the galaxy's future. The Emperor's fall. Emperor Vurek, once so powerful, found himself cornered, his empire in ruins and his guards defeated. In the face of the siblings, his arrogance crumbled into desperation. "You will never win," he gasped, trying to stand tall despite his growing fear. "We already have," Eric said, his voice cold as steel. "Your empire is finished." With one final movement, Eric stepped forward and struck the Emperor down, the blow swift and merciless. The throne room fell silent as the Emperor collapsed, his body lifeless at the feet of the children he had wronged. The siblings stood together, victorious, but the weight of the moment was not lost on them. They had avenged their mother, but at what cost? The galaxy had been ravaged by years of conflict, and while the Empire was no more, the path to peace was still a long one. Legacy, a new dawn for the galaxy. With the death of Emperor Vurek, the Galactic Empire fell. Its vast territories were left in turmoil, its military scattered. The children of Lyra had fulfilled their mission. They had avenged their mother, and they had liberated the galaxy from the Empire's oppressive rule. But the galaxy was not yet at peace. The siblings knew that their work had only just begun. Eric, now a leader of the rebellion, began to organize a new government, one that would give power back to the people. Selene, with her wisdom and magical abilities, became a spiritual guide, helping the galaxy rebuild its shattered culture and traditions. Kale Jr., the brilliant strategist, worked to ensure that the new galaxy was united, connected, and free from the mistakes of the past. The final showed down the escape. Elysia and Lorian sprinted down the dimly lit corridors of the research facility, the sound of heavy boots pounding in the distance. They could hear the alarms blaring, the sirens that would soon be followed by reinforcements. The escape route was narrow and winding, designed to keep intruders at bay, but not fast enough for someone like Elysia, who had been trained to navigate such labyrinths with ease. Lorian, despite his newfound resolve, was struggling to keep up. He wasn't used to this life, not like his mother. The chaos, the violence, the constant threat of death. It was too much for someone who had spent most of his life in classrooms, not war zones. Elysia noticed his hesitation. She turned to him. Her face softened for the first time in what felt like forever. Asterisk, asterisk, keep up, Lorian. I won't let them take you again. Asterisk, asterisk. Lorian nodded, determination hardening in his eyes. He wasn't the naive boy who had walked into the facility, believing in the Council's lies. He was something more now, something forged in the fire of truth and betrayal. He had learned to trust his mother again, not just a diplomat, but the woman who had killed, sacrificed, and fought for everything she held dear. As they turned the corner, a group of council soldiers appeared ahead, weapons raised. Elysia immediately sprang into action. She moved like lightning, her blade flashing through the air as she took down the first guard with a swift strike. Lorian, now more confident, grabbed a nearby weapon, a stun gun, and incapacitated another guard, his hand steady as he focused on the mission at hand. The fight was swift but brutal. Alicia's instincts were sharper than ever, but she could feel the toll the years had taken. Her body was no longer as quick as it used to be, but her mind was still a weapon. Lorian, now a full participant in this world of violence, followed her lead with precision. Together, they were a force that the Council's operatives had never anticipated. They reached the hangar at the far end of the facility, where the escape shuttle was waiting. The ship's engines hummed softly, ready to launch. But as they approached, a final barrier stood in their way. *** Commander Garen ***, the leader of the Council's elite security team. ***, you're not going anywhere. Elysia. ***, Garen's voice was cold, authoritative, his posture rigid with military precision. ***, the Council will make sure you and your son pay for your betrayal. ***. Alicia's grip tightened around her weapon, her face steely. ***, you're welcome to try, Garen. But you'll fail. ***. The face-off with Garen. The tension in the hangar was palpable. Garen was a man of great power within the Council, a man who had once been one of Alicia's closest allies. They had fought side by side on countless missions, shared the same goals, and even respected each other. But now, he was the enemy, one of the many who had played a part in manipulating and controlling her son. ***, why Elysia? ***, Garen demanded, his tone filled with disbelief. ***, why betray everything we worked for? The Council gave you everything. We trusted you. ***. Alicia's eyes narrowed, her voice low and dangerous. ***, the Council doesn't care about trust. They care about power. And I'm done being their pawn. ***. And your son. ***. Garen's eyes flickered to Lorian, who was standing behind Elysia, his hand still tightly gripping the stun gun. ***, you think you can protect him from the consequences of your actions? The Council doesn't forget. Elysia, you've been a tool to them, and now you've outlived your usefulness. ***. Lorian's breath quickened. The anger was rising in him. He had been told his whole life that the Council was an institution of order, of peace, of diplomacy. But in the space of a few short days, he had learned the truth about its ruthless pursuit of control. His mother had been right all along. The Council didn't care about peace. They only cared about power. Elysia took a step forward, her eyes locked onto Garen's with cold determination. ***, you think the Council will win this? They've already lost. They just don't know it yet. ***. With that, the first shot rang out. The battle was now in full force. Garen and Elysia exchanged blows with the precision of old comrades, but the years of experience Elysia had as an assassin had not dulled. She was faster, more ruthless, and more willing to do whatever it took to protect her son. Garen was skilled, but he was not prepared for ferocity that burned within her. She knew him well, every move he made, every tactic he used. She anticipated his every strike, countering with a deadly blow each time. As the fight raged on, Lorian's gaze never left his mother. He had been trained by her in the art of diplomacy, but now he saw the full extent of her abilities. This was not the woman he had once idolized in speeches and meetings. This was a woman who had survived in a world that valued nothing but strength and sacrifice. With a final, swift motion, Elysia disarmed Garen, sending him crashing to the ground. He looked up at her, shock in his eyes. ***, you've made a mistake. Elysia. ***. She stood over him, the weapon in her hand steady. ***, no. You made a mistake when you thought you could control me. ***. The escape and the truth. With Garen defeated, Elysia and Lorian made their way to the shuttle. The engines roared to life, and the doors slammed shut behind them. As the shuttle ascended, Lorian looked out the viewport, watching facilities shrink into the distance. The Council's fortress, once an unshakable symbol of power, was now nothing more than a distant memory. Elysia sat beside him, her face tense but calm. The danger was far from over, but they had won this battle. She had kept her promise. She had saved her son. Asterisk, asterisk, Mom. Asterisk, asterisk. Lorian's voice was soft, tentative. Asterisk, asterisk. I didn't understand before. I didn't see the real you. I was so caught up in what I thought the Council was. I couldn't see that you were doing everything to protect me. To protect all of us. Asterisk, asterisk. Elysia turned to him, her eyes softening for a moment. Asterisk, asterisk. I did what I had to do, Lorian, and I'd do it again. For you. Asterisk, asterisk. He nodded, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. Asterisk, asterisk, I know. I understand now. You weren't the monster they painted you to be. You're the woman who saved me from the moment I was born. Asterisk, asterisk. The silence between them was comfortable now, no longer filled with the weight of secrets. The truth had been revealed, and for the first time, Lorian saw his mother, not just as a diplomat, not just as the assassin, but as a woman who loved him, who would go to any length to protect him. A new beginning. As the shuttle drifted toward the outer reaches of the galaxy, Elysia knew that this was only the beginning. The Council was far from defeated. They would come for them. They would try to reclaim their power. But Elysia had made her decision. She would fight, not for the Council's vision of peace, but for her son's future, for a future where the galaxy would not be ruled by fear and manipulation. Lorian looked at his mother, his resolve firm. He had seen the truth, and he was ready to stand by her side. Asterisk, asterisk, what's next? Asterisk, asterisk, he asked, his voice steady. Elysia smiled slightly, the first true smile he had seen in days. Asterisk, asterisk, next, we rewrite the rules. Together, asterisk, asterisk. And as they disappeared into the vastness of space, the war they had started was far from over. But for the first time, they knew they had the power to shape their own destiny.